Let's maul in the Central Committee. Let's cringe in the Central Committee. Let's bog in the Central Committee right now.
I haven't had a pudding pop since I found out what Bill Cosby did. How about you, chat? I haven't had a pudding pop since I found out what Bill Cosby did. I just can't enjoy it anymore. What's a pudding pop? You don't know what a pudding pop is? Pudding pops. They're like you take pudding and you freeze it. It's a pudding pop. Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby was a huge pudding pop guy.
Jello pudding pops, Jello pudding pops, frozen pudding on a stick. You know, Jello pudding pops is a winner with all the soapbox racers I know.
It is?
Mm-hmm. And even your mechanic's getting all revved up about it because it's so rich and creamy.
Yeah.
And it always gets the green light from Mom because it's made with real pudding.
Jello brand pudding pops. All the goodness of real Jello pudding, so you know it's wholesome.
A true winner.
And it gets a green light from Mom.
So he was the big pudding pop spokesperson for a long time. 6 Bill Cosby Jello commercials that are just awkward. Now. Oh no, they're all being taken down. Oh no, they're all being taken down. We are taking those down.
Jello pudding pops, frozen pudding on a stick. You know, all the finest castles serve Jello pudding pops.
They do?
It's a snack fit for a king because
Man,
it's
he's
so
really
rich and
selling
creamy.
hard, man.
Yeah.
And Mom won't throw you into the old dungeon when you eat it because she knows it's made with real pudding.
It is?
Mm-hmm.
Jello brand pudding pops. All the goodness of real Jello pudding made with milk, so you know it's wholesome.
A veritable feast for the tummy.
And I won't end up in the dungeon.
If Bill Cosby comes up to you with a treat and talks about dungeons, run. Bill Cosby's sexual assault conviction will be overturned and the 83-year-old comedian will be released from prison after the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court issued an opinion to vacate his conviction. Pennsylvania's highest court overturned the conviction after finding an agreement with a previous prosecutor prevented Cosby from being charged in the case. Wait, what? The first involved the judge's decision to let prosecutors call 5 of their accusers in addition to Andrea Constant. Cosby had accused of drugging and molesting Constant at his estate in 2004. He was charged in 2015 for the alleged attack and arrested just days before the 12-year statute of limitations expired. Originally, the trial judge had allowed just one other accuser to testify at Cosby's first trial. However, after the jury deadlocked, the judge then allowed 5 other accusers to testify at Cosby's retrial. The testimony tainted the trial, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said, even though the lower appeals court had found it appropriate to show a pattern of behavior. This report also reviewed Cosby's argument that he had an agreement with a former prosecutor that he would never be charged. Oh no. Wow, was this a unanimous decision? Was this a unanimous decision? Okay, Justice Doherty files a concurring and dissenting opinion. Just Saylor dissented? All right, let's look at this. It must be remembered that D.A. Castor's decision not to prosecute Cosby and to announce the decision orally and in a written press release was not designed to facilitate the use of testimony against Cosby in a future trial. Instead, D.A. Castor induced Cosby's forfeiture of his Fifth Amendment rights as a mechanism and a lever to aid Constant's civil action and improve the chances that she would receive at least a monetary benefit for the abuse that she suffered. Given that D.A. Castor had determined that Constant would not and could not get relief in a criminal trial. Through his deliberate efforts, D.A. Castor effectively forced Cosby to participate against himself in a civil case in a way that Cosby would not have been required to do had he retained his constitutional privilege against self-incrimination. To say the least, this development significantly weakened Cosby's legal position. Cosby was compelled to give inculpatory evidence that ultimately led to a multi-million-dollar settlement. The end result was exactly what D.A. Castor intended. Cosby gave up his rights, and Constant received significant financial relief. Under these circumstances, where our equitable objective in remedying a due process violation is to restore an aggrieved party to the status he held prior to that violation, exclusion of the deposition testimony from a third criminal trial, and nothing more, falls short of what our law demands. Through this appeal emanates from Cosby's criminal convictions, we cannot ignore the true breadth of the true due process violation. The deprivation includes the fact that D.A. Castor's actions handicapped Cosby in the derivative civil suit. Nor can we ignore the fact that weakening Cosby's position in that civil case was precisely why D.A. Castor proceeded as he did. Suppression of evidence in a third criminal trial can never restore Cosby to the position he held before he forfeited his Fifth Amendment rights. The consequences of D.A. Castor's actions include the civil matter, and no exclusion of deposition testimony can restore Cosby's injuries in that regard. It was not only the deposition testimony that harmed Cosby. As a practical matter, the moment that Cosby was charged criminal, he was harmed. All he had forfeited earlier and the consequences of that forfeiture in the civil case were for naught. This was, as the CDO itself characterizes it, an unconstitutional coercive bait and switch. It is the true and full breadth of the consequences of the due process violation. It separates this case from the cases relied upon by the CDO, including Stiptich. Each of these prosecutions involved effective or unenforceable promises that resulted in suppression remedies. Critically, none of them featured the additional harm inflicted in this case. In none of those cases did the effects of the constitutional violation extend to matters beyond the criminal trial, as is the circumstances here. Accordingly, none of those cases support, much less compel, the limited remedy that the CDO proffers. The impact of the due process violation here is vast. The remedy must match that impact. Starting with D.A. Castor's inducement, Cosby gave up his fundamental constitutional right, was compelled to participate in a civil case after losing that right, testified against his own interest, weakened his position there, and ultimately settled the case for a large sum of money. Was tried twice in criminal court, was convicted, and has served several years in prison. All of this started with D.A. Castor's compulsion of testimony's reliance upon a public proclamation that Cosby would not be prosecuted. The CDO's remedy for all of this would include subjecting Cosby to a third criminal trial. That is no remedy at all. Rather, is an approach that would place Cosby nowhere near where he was before the due process violation took root. There is only one remedy that can completely restore Cosby to status quo ante. He must be discharged, and any future prosecution on these particular charges must be barred. We do not dispute that this remedy is most severe and rare, but it is warranted here, indeed compelled. The CDO would shun this remedy because, at least in part, it might thwart the public interest and having the guilty brought to book. It cannot be gainsaid that society holds a strong interest in the prosecution of crimes. It is also true that no such interest, however important, ever can eclipse society's interest in ensuring that the constitutional rights of the people are vindicated. Society's interest in prosecution does not displace the remedy due to constitutionally aggrieved persons. Do not question the discretion that is vested in prosecutors over whether charges can be brought in any given case. It will not undermine a prosecutor's general and widely recognized power to conduct criminal litigation and prosecutions on behalf of the Commonwealth, and to decide whether and when to prosecute, and whether and when to continue or discontinue a case. The decision to charge or not to charge a defendant cannot be conditioned, modified, or revoked at the discretion of the prosecutor. However, the discretion vested in our Commonwealth prosecutors, however vast, does not mean that the exercise is free of the constraints of due process. When an unconditional charging decision is made publicly, and with the intent to induce action and reliance by the defendant, and when the defendant does so to his detriment, denying the defendant the benefit of that decision is an affront to fundamental fairness, particularly when it results in a criminal prosecution that was foregone for more than a decade. No mere changing of the guard strips that circumstance of its inequity. A contrary result would be patently untenable. It would violate long-cherished principles of fundamental fairness. It would be antithetical to and corrosive of the integrity and functionality of the criminal justice system that we strive to maintain. For these reasons, Cosby's convictions and judgment of sentence are vacated and he is discharged. So basically what happened, chat, is that a prosecutor in Pennsylvania said that Bill Cosby was not going to be prosecuted, and he gave him kind of constructive immunity from being prosecuted. And because he was given immunity, Cosby couldn't invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination at his civil trial, and so he was compelled to testify. He was compelled to testify at the civil trial. And then later, that DA was out of office, and a new district attorney came in and said, I'm prosecuting Bill Cosby for all the sexual assaults he did. And he was up against a statute of limitations of 12 years, so he had to file that prosecution immediately. And basically, he used the deposition, the testimony that Cosby was compelled to give in the civil trial. And because he was compelled to give it, why was he compelled to give it? Because he couldn't use his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination because he had constructive immunity from the prosecutor's previous statements. So the civil judge said, yo, you can't use Fifth Amendment because you're not being prosecuted for this. You won't be prosecuted for this, so you have to testify. And when Cosby testified, he admitted to enough things that it was pretty clear that he was guilty. So I have a lot of thoughts here. First of all, the reason why the prosecutors relied on this stuff is because for the longest time, rich people were above the law, especially rich men when they committed sexual assaults. When rich men commit sexual assaults, they don't have to face the consequences of their actions. And so finally, there was a culture where he could finally be brought to heel, but it was with statute of limitations bearing down on the prosecutors. Secondly, a DA's public statement, that's horseshit. Now the DA can just say, now every corrupt DA can just walk out there and say, I'm not going to prosecute a criminal that he has a relationship with. And if that criminal makes any adverse admissions, he's now forbidden from being prosecuted? That's absurd. I do think the thing that turned this is the compelled testimony at the civil trial, which basically, made this a different case. Now, I'm not even sure that's actually true. Did they use the DA testimony in the trial? They were then used by DA Castor's successors against Cosby at the Cosby criminal trial. Eventually, Constant decided to leave her job at Temple and return to Canada to work as a masseuse. In January 2004, Constant went to Cosby's Cheltenham residence to discuss the decision. After her previous visits to Cosby's home, Constant entered through the kitchen door. On this occasion, however, Constant noticed that Cosby had already placed a glass of water and a glass of wine on the kitchen table. When she sat at the table with Cosby and discussed her future, Constant initially chose not to sample the wine because she had not yet eaten and didn't want to consume alcohol on an empty stomach. At Cosby's insistence, however, Constant began to drink. At one point, Constant rose to use the restroom. When she returned, Cosby was standing next to the kitchen table with 3 blue pills in his hand. He reached out and offered the pills to Constant, telling her the pills were her friends, and they would help take the edge off. Constant took the pills from Cosby and swallowed them. She then set that back down and resumed the discussion of Constant's planned departure from Temple. Constance soon began experiencing double vision. Her mouth became dry and she slurred her speech. Though Constance could not immediately identify the source of her sudden difficulties, she knew that something was wrong. Cosby tried to reassure her. He told her that she had to relax. When Constance attempted to stand up, she needed Cosby's assistance to steady herself. Cosby guided her to a sofa in another room that she could lie down. Constance felt weak and was able to talk. She started slipping out of consciousness. Moments later, Constance came to suddenly, finding Cosby sitting behind her on the sofa. She remained unable to move or speak. When Constance, physically incapable of stopping Cosby or telling him to stop, Cosby began fondling her and penetrating her. He took her hand and used it to masturbate him. Yeah, there you go. Sexual assault stuff. I'm sorry, chat, for not. I mean, we're talking about Cosby. I think everybody knows this, but she tried to ask him why he took advantage of her when she was under the influence of those pills. Cosby was evasive and did not respond directly. She did not report to the authorities what Cosby had done to her. During the call, Constance told her mother that Cosby had sexually assaulted her approximately 1 year earlier. Together, the two decided the best course of action was to contact the Durham Regional Police Department in Ontario, Canada, and attempt to retain legal counsel in the United States. On January 24, 2000, Sergeant Schaefer first spoke with Constant by telephone on January 19, 2005. According to Sergeant Schaefer, Constant seemed nervous throughout this brief initial interview. However, Constant traveled from Canada to Chatham to meet, I don't know how to say that, to meet the investigating team in person. Because this was Constant's first time meeting with law enforcement personnel, she felt nervous and uncomfortable in discussing with them the intimate nature of her allegations. Then Montgomery County District Attorney Bruce Castor issued a press release informing the public that Cosby was under investigation for sexual assault. Sergeant Schaefer and other law enforcement officials interviewed Cosby in New York City, utilized a written question and answer format. Cosby was accompanied by his attorneys. Cosby reported that Constant had come to his home at least 3 times during their social and romantic relationship. Cosby claimed that on the night in question, Constant came to his house complaining of an inability to sleep. He stated that he told Constant that when he travels, he takes Benadryl and antihistamine, which immediately makes him drowsy. According to Cosby, he handed Constant 1.5 Benadryl pills. Cosby admitted that he touched it, that after she ingested the pills, they kissed and touched each other on the couch. He denied having sexual intercourse with her and disclaimed any intent to do so that night. In February 2005, then Attorney General Castor reviewed Constant's interviews and Cosby's written answers in order to assess the viability of a prosecution of Cosby. The fact that Constant had failed to promptly file a complaint against Cosby troubled the district attorney. In D.A. Castor's view, such a delay diminished the reliability of any recollections and undermined the investigators' efforts to collect forensic evidence. Moreover, D.A. Castor identified a number of inconsistencies in Constant's various statements to investigators. After Cosby provided his written answers, police officers searched his Chatham residence and found no evidence that, in their view, could be used to confirm or corroborate Constant's allegations. Following the search of Cosby's home, Constant was interviewed by police again. D.A. Castor noted that there were inconsistencies in that interview which further impaired Constant's credibility in his eyes. He also learned that before she was contacted the police in Canada, Constant had contacted civil attorneys in Philadelphia, likely for the purpose of pursuing financial compensation in a lawsuit against Cosby. As evidenced by the number of telephone calls that she recorded, Constant continued to talk with Cosby on the phone, and she continued to meet with him in person after the incident. D.A. Castor found these reoccurring interactions between a complainant and an alleged perpetrator to be atypical. D.A. Castor also reasoned that the recordings likely were illegal, including discussions that would be interpreted as attempts by Constant and her mother to get Cosby to pay Constant so she would not contact the authorities. There you go, chat. Pretty standard stuff for when a woman accuses someone powerful of sexual assault. Everything she says is gone over with a fine-tooth comb. She's given person interviews. And Cosby gets to have his 2 lawyers write responses. And then after he disposes of all the evidence, then his home is searched. Jesus Christ. Mike, ABC spoke with Cosby's attorney just a moment ago.
And Lindsay, your reaction here and what you think of how the court approached this tangled web of Cosby's interactions with the Montgomery County, Pennsylvania prosecutor's office.
You know, I have to say, Terry, I'm not shocked because when you watched the Pennsylvania Supreme Court when they did their virtual hearing several months ago now, they really were having quite a sticking point with this issue as far as the fact that Bruce Castor had given his word, had made a promise. I mean, there was some question about the fact that there was never any evidence that they could ever find this promise that was in writing. But you could tell that they were really grappling with it, and it didn't seem that they were convinced that this was the accurate assessment or conclusion was that he should have been found guilty and put in prison and even tried based on that agreement with Bruce Castor. did talk to Brian McMonagle, who was Cosby's attorney in that first trial that ended up being a hung trial. His reaction, wow. About 7 times at the beginning of the phone call was just wow. The next word out of his mouth was unbelievable. And he said if he had had bail pending appeal, he never would have served a day, and he felt that would have been the right reaction at that time. Of course, Bruce Castor did take the witness stand in that first trial. He was presented by Brian McMonagle and the defense team. And Castor, when he took the stand, he owned that commitment. He owned that promise that he had made to Bill Cosby. But again, they just were not able to have any evidence that it was ever put into writing.
And so that's what the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania did. They took those conversations between Bill Cosby and the first prosecutor in this case, and they said that, in effect, Cosby agreed to talk to the prosecutor on the understanding that he would not be prosecuted for his answering questions. In other words, he was waiving his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination by doing that original interview with prosecutors. And the court's saying here that it is a reasonable conclusion that Cosby reached, that he wouldn't be prosecuted for what he told them. And now the Supreme Court saying that the subsequent prosecution brought by a different prosecutor, it's unconstitutional and it must be tossed out. Now,
by the way, chat, he later went on and served as Trump's defense attorney
tonight. Former Montgomery County
during the second impeachment of Donald Trump. He was
District Attorney
he was
Bruce
Donald
Castor
Trump's
will
defense
be one
attorney.
Of two attorneys representing former President Donald Trump at his upcoming impeachment trial. Castor was selected after several South Carolina lawyers quit Trump's team over the weekend. Trump wanted the attorneys to focus on election fraud claims rather than the constitutionality of the trial. Castor served as Montgomery County District Attorney from 2000 to 2008. He's known for declining to file sexual assault charges against comedian Bill Cosby, citing insufficient evidence. Cosby was later convicted. Castor will work alongside Alabama attorney David Schoen, who met with Jeffrey Epstein in jail before his death.
Unreal, dude. Unfucking real, dude. Completely insane.
We do politics here every morning starting at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. You can watch us here on Twitch. We're the morning guy. The morning politics guy. Politics Frogs in every single day. Same time, 10 a.m. Day in, day out. And we carry you through your morning and early afternoon politics needs. And if you need more, Mike from PA, we have a YouTube channel. We talked about suburbs, the My Pillow guy, Ted Cruz. We talked about DSA. Amazing. Making fun of Tim Pool. Amazing. Look at all of these amazing videos. Get in there, watch them. We have me on Twitter. You got to follow me on Twitter, chat. I'm at 20,614 subs. That means I got like 40 followers on Twitter in the last day. You can do better than that. You can do better than that. Go follow us on Twitter. And of course, join the Discord, where we have an incredible community of left-wing streamers. We have left-wing community. We talk about the stream. We talk about politics. There's gaming content. It's a really awesome, supportive place. Direct action, mutual aid, and you can just let off some steam. And also, you can help produce the show. One of the things I do is I look at the links that are put into the news content suggestions chat room on the Discord. Join the Discord, come hang out, and maybe what you want me to talk about will be part of the next show.